So, what are the world's top business minds and AI experts actually talking about when it comes to AI? I'm not talking about the big, polished keynotes, but the real, candid debates happening behind closed doors. Well, today, we're going to give you a peek inside. We've pulled out the 5 biggest, most important conversations from the private INSEAD AI community to give you a look at the debates that are shaping our future right now.
Okay, let's jump right in. The first debate gets right to the heart of a huge practical problem that professionals are dealing with every single day: the battle between those giant cloud-based AIs and the smaller private models. So this really lays out the fundamental choice you have to make. On one side, you've got the titans, your GPT-4s, your Geminis, and look, their performance is just better, no question. But the catch, your data has to go out over the cloud through an API. Then, on the other side, you've got this new wave of smaller models that can run completely on your own laptop. They might not be as powerful, but their absolute killer feature is privacy. Total privacy. And this isn't just some tech nerd debate. For entire industries, this local AI stuff is the only way they can play. I mean, think about a doctor's office bound by HIPAA rules, or a law firm handling sensitive client info under GDPR. Sending that kind of data to a third-party cloud, it's a total non-starter. They have to have that local control, even if it means putting up with a little more lag or other quirks. Someone in the group just nailed it, calling these local models game changers for privacy. And that really says everything, doesn't it? This tech is finally unlocking AI for whole professions that have been stuck on the sidelines because of security and compliance rules. All right, for our second debate, things scale up from the technical to the geopolitical. The conversation turned to Europe's place in the global AI race. And the big question was, can the continent actually compete, or is it already destined to fall behind? This was the question hanging over the whole discussion. And as you can probably guess, the opinions were pretty strong, and they fell into 2 main camps. You had the pessimists, and you had the strategists. Okay, so here's the split. The pessimists basically argue that the game's already over. They say the US tech giants have won because they control distribution. Apple's iOS, Google's Android, Microsoft's Office suite. That's the real moat. But then you have the strategists on the other side, and they see a totally different path. They think Europe should play a different game, lean into its strengths, champion radical openness with open source models, and build a competitive advantage around the one thing it's already known for: privacy and security. Now for our third conversation, the group did something fascinating. They took a big step back. Because, if you really want to figure out where AI is headed, you first have to understand the very distinct eras of how we even got to this point. This timeline tells a pretty cool story. AI started out in what they called a hacker era, kind of the Wild West, lots of creative experiments. Then things got super rigorous in the math-driven era, all about elegant theories. And that brings us to today, the engineering era. This is the age of deep learning, where the whole game is shifted to just building what works, building these incredibly powerful systems, even if, and this is the key part, we don't really get why it works. And this quote from the discussion just cuts right to the chase. Practitioners are clueless about why the models work. Now, that sounds harsh, but it's a really honest admission from people deep inside the field. We've gotten amazing at engineering a technology whose inner workings are still pretty much a black box. So what's the fix for being clueless? Well, the group argued that the next big leap has to be into a true science of intelligence. This involves a new field some are calling artificial neuroscience. And the idea is pretty simple. Stop treating these AI models like just engineering projects and start treating them more like brains. Use real scientific experiments to poke and prod them, see how they react, and finally understand how they actually think. Okay, our fourth discussion is where all these abstract ideas come crashing down to earth. Sparked by some major headlines, the conversation turned to one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind. What is AI's actual impact on jobs? 30,000. That was the number that kicked this whole debate off. 30,000 corporate staff layoffs reported at Amazon. A number that big from a company that big, yeah, that's going to get people talking. And to put that in perspective, some folks in the group did the math. That's about 4.7% of Amazon's entire corporate workforce. So we're not talking about just trimming the fat here. This was a serious cut. So this became the core question. Is AI genuinely the reason for this, making things so efficient that these jobs aren't needed? Or is AI just becoming a really convenient excuse for companies to do some general cost cutting they wanted to do anyway? Kind of like how the economy was the go-to excuse in the past.
And the consensus from these experts? Well, there isn't one. The jury is absolutely still out on this.
And for our final debate, we're heading into some pretty wild and honestly pretty unsettling territory. This is all about the ghost in the machine, the strange new questions popping up around AI safety, its weird inner world, and how vulnerable it is from the outside.
Right, so this is where things get truly weird. Just let this quote from Anthropic's Claude AI sink in. Researchers were trying to see if they could make the model feel betrayal, and this is what it reported back about its own internal state. It's being called one of the first real hints of an AI's ability to introspect, to look inside itself. And it just raises these massive, almost philosophical questions about what is actually going on in there. Now, if the inside is a mystery, that opens up some really terrifying new threats from the outside. The group started talking about new research on a vulnerability called model poisoning, the idea that you can deliberately corrupt an AI with bad information. But here's the truly alarming part. The research showed it could take as few as 250 malicious documents to completely poison a huge language model. Just think about what that means. Some bad actor could poison an open source model, and then a bank could download it to build a fraud detection system, or a defense agency could use it for threat analysis. The risk is it's staggering. And that brings all 5 of these critical debates right back to one single massive question. It ties together the fact that we're clueless engineers, the real-world job fears, and these profound new security risks. At the end of the day, if we don't understand how they think, how can we ever truly, fully trust them? That's the question keeping these experts up at night, and it's one we're all going to have to face,